We are not nearly done fighting. We're not going to stop until he walks out of prison a free man to his family.
The fight isn't over for Sean Diddy Combs. A month after being convicted by a jury, his defense team is asking to vacate the verdict or put him back on trial.
Diddy could be released from jail any moment now, and the courtroom has descended into total chaos. A shocking legal twist, one that no one saw coming, has thrown the entire case into uncertainty. What the world thought was a done deal, locked down and signed off,
So Diddy is now not only fighting to get out, he wants the whole thing overturned. And his main argument is, I didn't have sex with them, I just directed amateur porn.
He didn't just sit there, though.
He self-pleasured during these acts. You may not hire someone to perform sex acts in front of you for your own personal pleasure.
Right.
That is still an act of prostitution.
The mogul last faced a court during his 32-day federal trial in New York, which wrapped in late June. Prosecutors accusing him of illegally orchestrating drug-fueled group sex marathons he called freak-offs.
I'm the world's most interesting man, and I throw the best parties.
At the same time, it was a scary situation because you have, 12 people who hold the fate of your life.
Diddy maintained his innocence and, in the end, was found not guilty of the more serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering, dodging the possibility of a life sentence. He was, however, convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, the max 20 years.
Diddy is going to get some time. I'm expecting something on the lower end of maybe 3 to 4 years.
But in a new 62-page motion filed Wednesday, Diddy's legal team is throwing a Hail Mary. They're arguing the convictions should not stand, one, because they go against precedent. They say, quote, Combs is the only person ever convicted under the statute where he neither had sex with the alleged prostitutes, nor profited, nor acted with the intent to commit any sexual assault or trafficking. And 2, because the mounds of scandalous evidence presented in court to prove the now rejected charges poisoned the jury.
Could he be pardoned by the President of the United States? That is a question that came up a lot when we were doing the live streams of the Diddy trial every day on YouTube. I never really considered it as a real possibility, but I'll tell you what, now, based on current reporting, we may have to take this seriously. Oh, and in terms of relief for Diddy, we also have to get into his defense team's new memo that they filed arguing that his conviction should be thrown out, or at the very least, he should get a new trial. We're going to talk about that too. And by the way, let me tell you, we have an amazing guest who I'm going to be bringing on in a little bit, somebody who actually helped secure federal pardons for his clients, including from President Trump, and is an expert in criminal law, has been following this case from the very beginning. I'm going to bring him on in a little bit. But why do I say that we have to take pardons seriously now? Why? Well, TMZ has reported that President Donald Trump's administration has been talking to Diddy's legal team about a potential pardon, a forgiveness for a federal crime. It's enshrined in the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1, the president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. And according to TMZ, his decision to pardon Diddy may be determined based on if Judge Arun Subramanian grants Diddy bail, which, by the way, we dedicated a whole sidebar to the other day. His team just filed a brand new letter with the court asking for him to be released. I broke it down, discussed all those arguments. But TMZ also has reported that the pardon decision could also come down to how Diddy is ultimately sentenced on October 3rd. And remember, he was acquitted of racketeering and sex trafficking, but he was found guilty of the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, the Mann Act violations, namely transporting his exes, Jane and Cassie Ventura Fine, and men across state lines for the purposes of sex work. Each charge carries up to 10 years in prison, although I'll tell you, in a prior filing, the government was looking at roughly 4 to 5 year prison sentence. Mind you, this is before a pre-sentencing report has been prepared for the court, which does a full background.
Has now cracked wide open. And this time, it's not just the defense making noise. It's the system itself showing signs of collapse. The original guilty verdict came down hard. Swift, brutal. Headlines exploded. Social media went nuclear. It looked like the end of the road. A man once at the top of the industry brought down by the justice system with cameras documenting every fall from grace. But behind the scenes, something else was brewing. It began quietly. No leaks, no press releases, no dramatic speeches on courthouse steps. just a sealed motion filed directly with the judge requesting immediate review based on new evidence, and a critical procedural breakdown that no one had noticed before. Within hours, whispers turned to murmurs. Court officials were pulled into emergency meetings. Security was increased. Staff were ordered to cancel unrelated hearings.
For the verdict, this was back in May. And he said when asked about a pardon for Diddy, I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me. He used to really like me a lot, but I think when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up from what I read. I don't know, he didn't tell me that, but I'd read some little bit nasty statements in the paper all of a sudden. And Diddy had been photographed with Trump over the years. There was some sort of relationship there. President Trump even called him a good friend on a 2012 episode of his TV show The Apprentice. The problem is, some comments Diddy made about Trump in recent years as Diddy really entered the political realm. There was a video where he's speaking to radio host Charlemagne saying, if Trump gets elected, I really do believe in my heart there'll be a race war. In another video on Revolt, he says white men like Trump need to be banished. And by the way, you know who's not letting anyone forget this? Combs' rival 50 Cent. Took to social media recently, wrote, see, Trump don't like S like this, buddy. You run your mouth too much. And Donald doesn't take well to disrespect and doesn't forget who chooses to go against him. While working tirelessly to make America great again, there is no room for distraction. He would consider pardoning anyone who was being mistreated, not Puff Daddy. And let me tell you, the idea of Trump pardoning Diddy is not getting a ton of love out there. Conservative commentator Megyn Kelly posted on X, Trump should not pardon Diddy. He doesn't deserve it. He's a Trump hater. He's a woman abuser. MAGA is already upset over elites seeming to cover for each other. This would not help. GOP struggling with young female voters, most of whom will hate a Diddy pardon. And then you just had other random accounts like America First. What? He's actually considering this? Diddy is a depraved, abusive, sexual deviant who should be spending the rest of his life in prison. If Trump pardons him, he will get absolutely crushed. Who is advising him lately? It's looking like straight up sabotage at this point. There were other accounts that were not in favor of it, although there was this account. Milo posted on X, Trump has no choice but to pardon Diddy after the government, led by James Comey's daughter Maureen, simply lost interest in Diddy's guilt the moment they secured his tapes incriminating powerful Democrats. The prosecution was a shambles. The trial was a farce. Now, I want to talk about if this is really going to happen, how it would happen. Also, if it really depends on bail and sentencing, then what are we talking about? And I have somebody who not only has been following the Diddy case from the very beginning, not only is a renowned criminal defense attorney, but actually has obtained federal pardons from the president, including from Donald Trump. By the way, for his clients Kodak Black and Lil Wayne, those were maybe the most notable. I'm joined by Bradford Cohen. Bradford, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jess.
Now, before I even get into the pardon, okay, there was a bit of breaking news before we were going to come on. This is what I want to get your opinion on first. So Combs' defense team filed a memo in support of a motion for judgment of acquittal, or in the alternative, a motion for a new trial. And basically, I know you read through it, but basically the evidence, they would say, is insufficient to sustain that conviction. Their main arguments is really echoing what we've talked about a little bit when it came to the bail analysis, but that his prosecution, his conviction on these Mann Act prostitution charges is so unique. He wasn't profiting off of this business. All consenting adults were involved. The jury didn't find that there was any sex trafficking. They argued this isn't even prostitution per se, it's voyeurism, that the intent wasn't for people to travel for sex for money, but he paid them for their time. Everybody was having a good time. He makes a First Amendment argument that the freak-off.
Something big was happening, and no one knew just how big. Until now. That sealed filing, it contained a bombshell. Diddy's legal team had uncovered a foundational error in the trial process. Not an opinion. Not a debate. A fact. A technical, undeniable, and legally devastating misstep that could make the entire case fall apart in real time. The kind of error that judges don't take lightly. The kind that doesn't just reopen a case. It detonates it. The twist? A combination of Brady violations, mishandled evidence, and improper judicial conduct, allegedly all converging at once. First, evidence. Diddy's team claims that a key piece of evidence used to secure the conviction had been altered and re-entered into the record without full disclosure. That's a direct violation of evidentiary procedure. Chain of custody rules are clear. Once compromised, the evidence becomes legally useless. And yet, this piece was shown to the jury. discussed in closing arguments.
The legal saga of Sean Diddy Combs entering a new chapter after his guilty verdicts. In court docs obtained by E! News, the Bad Boy Records founder filed a new motion July 30th, requesting to either overturn his convictions or grant the 55-year-old a brand new trial. Less than a month after Combs was convicted for transportation to engage in prostitution, his attorneys calling the verdict unprecedented, alleging Combs never actually committed illegal acts as the law describes, saying in their motion Combs, at most, paid to engage in voyeurism as part of a swinger's lifestyle. That does not constitute prostitution under a properly limited definition of the statutory term. The media mogul's legal team demanding an acquittal, and if not, they'll request a fresh start in court without evidence tied to his not guilty verdicts surrounding charges for racketeering and sex trafficking. This comes after the trial judge denied Diddy's request to be released on bail.
And the hotel nights were performances that were typically videotaped so they could watch them later on. It's just amateur pornography. And then finally makes the argument that he was prejudiced because of all the other evidence that came in to prove RICO or sex trafficking and would have never came in if he was merely being prosecuted for prostitution, particularly the Intercontinental Hotel footage of him purporting to beat up Cassie Ventura Fine. And he says, at the very least, he needs a new trial. I hand it over to you. You think this is a successful argument?
Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if it's going to be successful in the judgment of acquittal. I think the argument is interesting because everyone agrees he might be the only person in custody right now that has ever been convicted of the Mann Act. The Mann Act, and it gives a nice history of the Mann Act, and a lot of people don't understand what the Mann Act is, but the Mann Act was enacted because of a racist motivation that white women were being recruited by people of color to go across state lines and make money. So actually pimping those women across state lines and making money off of their sexual exploits. Obviously, that's not the case here. It's used so infrequently, it might have been a handful of people were actually charged with the Mann Act. No one in custody currently has ever been convicted of the Mann Act. So it's an interesting argument to say, hey, listen, this Mann Act, the original reason for it was racist. The original way that it was applied was racist. The way it's applied here is incorrect because he was not making any money from
leaned on by the prosecution. Second, a Brady violation. That means the prosecution allegedly withheld exculpatory evidence from the defense, evidence that could have helped Diddy's case, possibly even change the outcome. That alone is grounds for retrial. But combined with the other issues, it's potentially nuclear. Third, improper judicial handling. According to the motion, the judge presiding over the case failed to recuse themselves from several pretrial decisions involving a personal connection to a third party in the case. That detail was allegedly hidden, ignored, or downplayed. If proven, it's not just misconduct, it's corruption. All of this in one motion, filed, reviewed, now fully under active emergency review. And make no mistake, the court is in complete disarray. Insiders describe the atmosphere as tense and combative. One clerk called it the most unstable legal proceeding I've seen in 20 years. Prosecutors are scrambling to mount a counter. Defense lawyers are reportedly holding multiple press briefings behind closed doors,
quote unquote pimping or getting these women across or men getting them across state lines. None of that was being done. This was all being done for entertainment purposes. So it's an interesting argument. I don't think this judge buys it. It might be interesting on an appeal, but I don't think the judge is going to give him a judgment of acquittal on those two counts based on the argument. Now, the more interesting argument to me, and it's their last argument for new trial, is that, listen, if you were just going to charge him with these two counts, which I originally said when I looked at all the evidence, and don't forget, I was getting calls during this trial from individuals that were telling me, hey, I have information that exonerates what they're saying against Sean Combs, essentially saying that Cassie and others were participating more than just having sex in a room. They were participating more than that. They were paying people. They were hiring people. They were sending me pictures even when Diddy wasn't around. They were asking me to come over even when Diddy wasn't around. These were what these witnesses were telling me, which is really Brady evidence. And I don't know if that was ever turned over. But the more interesting argument is that all these counts were charged. The only thing he was convicted of were the Mann Acts. And he probably wouldn't have been convicted of these Mann Acts but for all this other stuff that came in to try and prove these counts that they could not prove and did not have a basis for bringing.
Let me just challenge you on that, because this is a jury who didn't find that there was sex trafficking. And I can't confirm that they found him guilty of the Mann Act because of the hotel video or anything else. I mean, it seems to me that they might have convicted him on that based on the travel records, the payment receipts, all about that. Not even necessarily allegations of violence. I mean, do you think that it was because of, let's say, the Intercontinental Hotel video that he was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution? It always felt to me that they proved that charge based purely on, the documents.
Well, I always feel like during a trial, whenever you get a guilty verdict on one of the counts or two of the counts out of 6 or 7, you think to yourself, is it because of these other things that they brought up, how bad he is, he's not a good guy, the video came out? Sometimes juries will split the baby, meaning, there's people that want to convict, there's people that don't want to convict, and they're like, okay, let's convict him on these acts. We can all agree we can convict him on these acts. He's not a good guy. He transported these men across state lines. Let's convict him on this. There's always going to be a question of that. The only way to not have a question of that, obviously, is when the jury comes out, someone gives an interview and says, hey, this is why we did it, is because, this tape was so bad and these other incidents were so bad that we were like, we can't just let him walk with nothing. So we convicted him on the Mann Acts. Now, we don't have a juror saying that. Do I think eventually jurors are going to start coming out? Yeah, I think so. I think some of these jurors are going to come out. They're going to want to do some interviews, not before sentencing. And I think after sentencing, I think some of them will come out and we'll discuss it, because I think...
Not to speak to the media, but to prepare for the possibility of Diddy walking out within hours. Because here's the kicker. The motion doesn't ask for an appeal. It doesn't request reduced sentencing. It doesn't even call for a new trial. It demands immediate release, a full dismissal of all charges based on the procedural collapse, a legal reset, from guilty to free with one signed order. Court documents have been sealed, the docket has been frozen. No updates are being published publicly. Reporters outside the courthouse say they've never seen anything like it. No one is being let in. No one is being told anything. But legal sources say the judge has already cleared the next 2 days of all unrelated cases to focus solely on this motion. Because this is no longer just a trial, it's a crisis. And while all this is unfolding, Diddy remains locked up. But not for long. Law enforcement sources confirm that transfer units are on standby. A processing team has already been briefed for possible early release. Corrections officers have been instructed to prepare exit protocols. That only happens when a release is imminent, not hypothetical. Imminent. Legal analysts are stunned. Most say they've never seen a case unravel this quickly after a verdict. It's rare, almost unheard of. But here it is. Live. In real time. A high-profile conviction crumbling under its own weight just days after it was delivered. The prosecution is in full-blown panic mode. They're being forced to defend not just their argument, but their entire process. They've gone from confident and composed to cornered and combative. And they're not doing well under pressure. According to people in the room, their counter-argument lacked force, lacked evidence. It relied heavily on procedure and dismissed the defense's claims as irrelevant. But when the court is staring at violations, this serious, irrelevant doesn't cut it. The judge is reportedly deeply concerned. That's the language being used behind closed doors. Not reviewing, not considering, concerned. Because if this motion is true, then the court allowed a conviction to go through based on flawed evidence, a compromised jury, and undisclosed conflicts of interest. And if that's the case, there's no question. Diddy walks. The only question left is when. Some say within the next 24 hours. Others say it could take a few days to finalize the dismissal order. But the timeline doesn't matter. What matters is the direction. And that direction is pointing to the front door. Let's be clear. This is not just a legal loophole. This is a systemic breakdown. And Diddy's team is using it with brutal precision. No theatrics, no emotion, just pure strategy. Surgical legal moves at exactly the right moment. And Diddy? Still silent. Still not saying a word. Not to the press. Not to fans. Not to the public. No social media. No lawyer statements. Just silence. And that silence says everything. It's the silence of someone who already knows what's coming. If this release happens, and all signs point to yes, it's not just a win for Diddy. It's a black eye for the prosecution. A warning shot for the justice system. And a moment that will be replayed for years to come in law schools, newsrooms, and courtrooms. Because when the most high-profile case of the year crumbles in front of everyone, it doesn't just shake the people involved. It shakes the system itself. Social media is already catching fire. The hashtag number Diddy release is trending worldwide. Millions watching. Millions reacting. Everyone trying to figure out how a guilty verdict turned into a possible walkout in just a matter of days. The public is divided. Some say he's manipulating the system. Others say the system is correcting itself. But the facts are undeniable. This motion is real, it's active, and it's tearing the case apart. And as for Diddy, if he walks out, don't expect him to stay quiet forever. He may be silent now, but you better believe he's watching, calculating, planning his next move. And that move could include lawsuits, interviews, a comeback, a book deal. Who knows? Because freedom changes the whole equation. If he walks, it changes the conversation. From, was he guilty? To, was this even legal to begin with? And that shift, that single change in the narrative, is everything. Right now, court officials are under pressure. The world is watching. One signature could change everything. The judge is sitting on the edge of a legal earthquake, and everyone's waiting to see which way it breaks. Stay ready. This story is not slowing down. In fact, it's just getting started. And if this motion is granted, Diddy could be released from jail. Not in weeks, not in days. Any moment now.